Holy pride comes before a fall. This is Flight Check Season 5, Episode 4. We're back one more time, talking all aspects of FlyQuest. My name, as always, is Sandy Toes. To my left and my extra left, my fellow hosts Noxwar and Curly Double Q. Fellas, we were wrong about how things were gonna go. And FlyQuest ends up dropping 2-1 to Cloud9 in a series that was not... It was like one of those weird ones where it was like, you see a 2-1, you're like, oh, so it was close, right? And it's like, no, pretty much every game wound up being like a stomp.
Yeah.
By the 25-30 minute mark. So, yeah. Dignitas up next week. We'll see how that goes. One more shot to make it to Brazil. A lot of other interesting stuff going on around the LTA this week that we will get into as well. But Curly, just your immediate thoughts. I want to ask you about some of the other results. TL 100 Thieves. 100 Thieves shows everyone what's up. And all of a sudden, they're on their way to Brazil next month, or in a few weeks, I guess.
Yeah, apparently they really brought it together this split. I would not have predicted them to end up in the first seed of North America, beating out Team Liquid yesterday. I was watching it a little bit, and at first I was like, no way they're winning this game, and it looked like they might 2-0 them for a bit, but then they lost the second game. But then they came back and still won the series.
Right.
And then they even beat C9. So clearly the underdogs of the winter split in a very, very big way. Because I think a lot of people were low on 100 Thieves, especially with everything around this being their kind of like foot out the door season.
Yeah.
So you never really, we're used to like CLGs and TSMs and Immortals where their exits are kind of like quiet, and they don't really do much on their ways out. And then 100 Thieves, this might be their last year in League of Legends, and they at least won the first split of the new league in essence. So
yeah,
good on them for that. I think FBI is really performing well. And Ayla is also this is kind of the support that we wanted Ayla to be back when he was on FlyQuest, and it just shows that when you're able to find a stable home, you can do pretty good for yourself.
Yeah, it turns out that players that the community was just, frankly, just kind of shitting on for a few years, when you get them a good environment and the right teammates around them, turns out that they can actually be pretty good. Who knew?
I have to give
what a revelation!
What a revelation!
I have to give kudos to Golden Glue too, because I feel like he is one of the kind of spearheads of this development of 100 Thieves. He's been able to put a lot of time in for Ayla, even back. Well, no, he didn't work with Ayla on Academy, but with Ayla, even with Busio back when he was Academy for 100 Thieves, and then now coming up to coach the LCS/LTA team for the last couple of years. He's clearly putting in some good work over there.
No, for sure. Nox. Some other interesting results on the other side of the bracket. Dignitas taking down Disguised and Shopify taking down Leon. Basically, every series this weekend went the full 3 games, which was pretty fun. Do you feel like we learned anything else about the lower bracket, those bottom 4 teams this weekend? Or is it basically shaking out as you would expect?
I would say Leon and DSG both looked like they actually had monumentous improvements from week 1, in my opinion. And granted, they're playing against lower level teams, so the execution is nowhere near as good. So when we get into split 2 and they're playing the round robin versus the higher level teams, I'm sure it's going to probably look a little bit similar like it did the week 1. But I felt like watching the macro decisions that were happening from DSG were a little bit, not even a little bit, a lot better from what they were in week 1, because the macro was horrendous from them. Mm-hmm. And then I think in general, Lion has just put up some very solid games in general, but their cohesion and their ability to just make decisions on a dime's notice together is still not quite there yet. So with all that said, I think both teams showed a lot of improvement, and I think they're kind of on the up and up. And it sucks that they're on a 2-month break now. We literally won't even see them until April 5th.
I know, that's crazy to me, actually, and I do want to ask about that in a second. But yeah, finish your thought.
Yeah, but, so, I mean, with all that said, I mean, I thought they showed a lot of improvement, and it was great. I think Palafox had his probably far and away his best game since 2023. It's been well over a year since we've seen this Palafox.
Right.
And honestly, I'm here for
is
it, man.
back.
I would love to see him feeling himself again. If he's back in the league and he's actually performing mid laner once again, I think that's nothing but good things for the league. So I really hope he brings it to Team Liquid next week, because, I mean, not that APA looked bad, but he didn't really look all that great. And I think it's really a great opportunity for Palafox to reassert his dominion as the original new generation North American mid laner.
Yeah.
So I'll unironically be cheering for Palafox to do well versus Team Liquid. Last but not least, Dignitas played DSG, and I kind of am still not overly whelmed. I'm whelmed by Dignitas, to be honest. There's some bright shining moments here and there, and there's a lot of question marks for me, in my opinion, personally.
Okay.
It sucks because, like, I want to cheer for Surdy. Shaden, as much as his personality is not something I like to cheer for, his jungling is kind of interesting sometimes, but he's not been all that fascinating. And then in general, Dignitas is probably the least interesting team for me in this league right now, which sucks.
That's interesting.
I really do want to cheer for Surdy, but, like, this team is just not interesting to me at all. So, with that said, and a little bit spoilery, but I am not worried about FlyQuest versus Dignitas next week.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get into that as well. Actually, you brought something up that I wanted to ask about, which was the whole, now we've got both Leon and Disguised, who got to play 2 best of 3s, and now they're, gone for another 2 months until April. I mean, Curly, now that we finally see kind of what the format does, to these teams, like, how do you feel about that whole thing? Like, is this something that you're like, yeah, I feel like this is good, or, like, I'm just not sure how I'm personally taking it.
Well, I mean, for one, I can think of one way that we still get to see them play games for the next 2 months. We're going to be doing it this week with Cloud9,
right?
So they could scrim some streams,
scrim some
scrims, yeah. But overall, I think it's kind of something we were already going to see, not just in the LTA, but across a league and as an esport this year, with the universal 3 splits, and that, like, early international tournament. It's like these first, especially because we start later than everyone else, that first split is always going to be relatively condensed.
Okay.
And then in our case, because it's so unique, because we have a split for our conference and then the actual tournament. So whereas, like, the LCK and I think LPL are slightly different, or their conferences are much bigger. So it's like, yeah, that's fine. There's still plenty of gameplay with that.
Right.
So I don't know. It feels like it could be a danger of replicating LEC's winter problems of past, where it happens, you miss, like, actually, if you miss this week, you've missed 2 teams being eliminated.
Yeah.
And 2 teams being qualified, and now you've only got 1 week left. So that's, like, kind of a lot to miss over the course of a week. But then once you pull out the scope and remember, well, this is just for the North, we're still going to have that cross-conference tournament.
Right.
Then it's like, okay, that's fine. I think the good thing, though, is it will benefit teams that bow out quick more.
Okay, interesting.
Because having that extra practice time so early, I think it would actually be, like, it's really good, because if you, with the traditional spring split, MSI break into summer split, you kind of can drag yourself out over the course of the entire spring split. And if it doesn't go well, now you're like really downtrodden over how long you put into that. And you've got to watch, MSI in the midsummer, and then you just go back to LCS, and you might perform better, you might not. But with this, it's like, all right, we messed up. Now we've got 2 months to fix it. All right, did we mess up in spring? Okay, now we've got another month. It's like it spaces out the breaks, so you can kind of mentally process whatever happened and work on things more effectively without the stress of the stage games.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, Knox, how do you feel? Do you feel similarly on this one, or not at all?
I mean, I see the angle, right? Especially with no stress, and I think especially for DSG, this will be good because it'll really... Actually, no, it'll be good for Leon and DSG both. Because I think right now, their big thing is getting synergy down and macro decisions down.
Yeah.
And so they need to just, they're below their floor right now, if that makes sense. Like, they're in the basement. They need to climb up the steps and reach the ground floor of what their actual base can be.
Right.
And then I think it kind of becomes a problem because you start reaching the problem of needing like steel to sharpen steel, right? You really need like teams to grind against. And when these teams are in off season, or if you're like already out of the tournament, like high caliber teams aren't going to want to scrim you. They're going to want to scrim each other so that they get better, right? So you're stuck scrimming other teams who aren't also very good. So you kind of form your own meta of kind of crappy little scrimming, and then you get into the next season again, and suddenly it's like, oh man, we don't know how to play against the high caliber teams because all I've played against is other teams that also kind of suck. So in some ways, at least for this first split, I think both of those teams do need the time off, and it'll actually be good for them, and it'll get them to the base floor that's needed. Come split 2, though, if we were to like replicate this particular split where they're not competing again, I think it would actually be detrimental to them because they're only playing against other teams that are of the same caliber.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me.
I mean, the other thing I just thought of is you have that time off while everyone's down in Brazil. If you really can make it happen quickly, take a quick 2-week trip over to Korea, see which teams are eliminated from the LCK, say hello to them. Fearex always likes having people.
I just don't see a world where DSG, Lion,
immediately. No, I don't. I don't think it can happen immediately. But it's like a long-term prospect of all right, if you fund for that as an insurance policy of all right, if we don't win the first split, we're gonna have this prepped to do that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's you've got a bunch of teams here who sorry, not a bunch, but you've got 2 teams who, they don't get a lot of exposure, I think is one of my big concerns as well, is that now it's going to kind of be for 2 months, they're going to be kind of forgotten about. And not just these 2 teams, but then the 2 teams that are going to lose, this weekend, right? It's like a Team Liquid, if they were for some reason to lose against Shopify, right? They would be fine. They've got 8,000 other teams and other games that will keep them relevant in the esports world.
And they unironically have a facility in Sao Paulo, Brazil, that if they did want to go to Brazil and scrim with all the other teams during that time, they could. It would actually be extremely cheap for them.
Yeah, I mean, they'd be totally fine. But, the other teams don't have that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? Flexibility, I guess,
Resources?
Yeah, resources. They just don't have that available to them. So, I think, for me, it's just an unfortunate part of how the system works currently, and I wish there were something better. I wish that they weren't on such a long 2-week break. I almost wish that what they did was that this this first split, I guess, if you want to call it a split, right? I wish it would be a kind of it's just a tournament for seeding and everybody goes to Brazil, or something like that, right? Where everybody, goes to Brazil. It's a big 16 team tournament, and everyone gets a chance to do their thing. Like that could be interesting to me.
That'd be pretty spicy.
Yeah, it would be spicy, but I'm a little concerned about the loss of exposure for some of these other teams.
I think what I wish Riot had done was just, instead of claiming this as a split, just brand it as a tournament. This is a tournament, and it just knock it out in 6 days. Bang, done. 6 days, and you immediately go to Brazil. The top 4 teams, they play.
Right.
You do your normal thing down there. It's your playoffs or whatever, and then boom, you got your crown, and then immediately everyone goes to what's it called? I keep wanting to call it last stand, first strike, first stand.
First stand.
Yeah,
first stand.
Yeah.
You immediately go to first stand, just bam, 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 get it all done, and then at that point, you can have a proper split too. Like imagine and none of this happens just because every league wants to have a split or a season. But you have this crappy little international tournament with only 5 teams that's going to be done in the course of like a week and a half because it's only 5 teams, and it's just awkward. Like, why not just make this a tournament? This tournament qualifies for another tournament in Brazil, and from that tournament you go to first stand.
Yeah.
And then it's all done, and you have a proper split 2. Great, awesome, normal season. You're so hyped for it, and then we can get into split 3 later. I don't know. We'll see how that feels it out, but yeah, it's just I don't know why we're taking so long to knock this out for a bunch of teams who are not even highly prepped, had players coming in late, and then no one's really gelling together. Like, I wish everyone had just kind of been on the same page. We would have knocked everything out, and it would have been so much more hype too. Like actual tournaments, no, those don't even happen anymore outside of Worlds and MSI. So that's just kind of my general thoughts. Is I think it should have just been a lot quicker, and it would have kept the exposure for all those teams a little higher because everything would have gone a little bit quicker, and we would have gotten to split 2 quicker. You have so much less downtime.
No, totally. I mean that makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, I think again, like I was saying earlier, I think it's just an unfortunate product of how things work out. All right, I want to move on to some of the more interesting things. I do specifically want to talk about the 100 Thieves defeat of Team Liquid, and I just wanted to get y'all's take on that because that to me is just absolutely incredible. It was just so shocking to me that they actually won that. Curly, and I want to ask you first, what does this do for you in terms of shaking up power rankings in your head? Like, okay, are 100 Thieves actually legit? Should we be giving them more respect than? And I think the answer is yes. Should we give them more respect? But oh, okay, maybe are they in that conversation for top 2? Now.
I mean, obviously, right now they actually are top 2.
Yes,
that's
well,
how they finished. I think it definitely warrants more consideration because I think before the results of this weekend, I would have maybe peaked them top 3.
Yeah.
But they really showed up, and it depends a lot on what happens at the cross-conference tournament and how they perform there. Because I don't know. It's like the thing that really does it for me is the fact that the tiebreaker was a best of 1.
Mm-hmm.
I would be a lot more confident in being able to claim they are in contention for top 2 if it was a full best of 3, but it was just 1 game.
Yeah.
And so it's all right, could this have been an outlier? Would they have been able to go on the full series against Cloud9? So that for me is one limiter to it, but no, they're definitely worthy of respect. They definitely showed up.
Mm-hmm.
I hope they keep it running.
Yeah.
Because they had some good moments last spring and summer weren't not so much. So I want them to keep their momentum.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Knox, how about for you? What does this do for you in terms of estimating Team Liquid? Does it knock them down for you at all, or are they still a top team in your eyes?
I mean, this doesn't bump them down below 4th at all or anything like that.
Okay.
I'm very confident they're still going to Brazil. I will say I am now actually worried for them when it comes to Worlds time especially because now we only got 2 North American teams going to Worlds and not even just 3, which is fucking still. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I have a glaring issue with Umti. I think this series really signaled to me that Umti is a bit out of his league in terms of the elite junglers in the league right now, compared to like Blabber, Inspired, and even River. I think if TL is really going to continue to try and find success, Umti has got to step up his jungle game. Otherwise, Team Liquid is going to continue to find struggles throughout the rest of the year. Other than that, holy shit, man! I know you kind of gave the floor to Curly on the 100 Thieves talk, but
no, bring it. If you've got to take, do it.
Good God, Quid, that is some like season 4 Bjergsen coming to North American level of play.
He
it really was insane, good. Man.
Yeah,
I was like floored watching him play. I did not expect this from him. Like, I understood like watching him last year, and like he obviously won MVP, which I still disagree with at the time. It should have gone to River, but that's besides the point. Like, you could tell he was really coming together. He was becoming a really, really good player. And I was like, okay, cool. And I didn't think his ceiling was that much more above where he was performing at last year. If he continues this level of performance, he's going to be far and away the MVP for Split 1. But he's going to be an absolute threat on the international stage, man. Like, this is the kind of play, man. Like, Korean mids and the LCK are dropping all the time on the international stage versus anyone else. I was extremely impressed with the level of play that he was showing, and I really hope he continues to maintain it, because I have a feeling that as teams continue to develop and figure out how 100 Thieves plays, because there's still glaring issues with how that team plays, by the way, that as long as Quid continues playing like that, though, like, he will literally single-handedly carry them to like a first place in the LTA and possibly even a trophy internationally against all the Brazilian teams, and perhaps even a great performance in like MSI and Worlds. So, yeah, man, I was super floored with how great Quid was, and I really hope he can maintain that level of play, because it's exciting seeing someone with that quality in the LTA.
Yeah, no, I think his play was really the coolest part for me, just like in how dominant he was. And I really like that comparison you made, the comparison back to Season 4 Bjergsen. I think that's really great. I think 100 Thieves, you know, they made one swap out. I know some people were saying that, like, you know, FBI 4 Tomo, sorry, was completely blanking on who their ADC was last year. You know, they called it a side grade. I still viewed it as like an upgrade. I think I said that a few weeks ago too. And, you know, this is a team that like made Worlds in their first season together. And, you know, it was a very young team. You know, it's just very impressive, you know, what they have accomplished already and what they can potentially accomplish, you know, in the future. So I'm really excited to see where things go from here for them. And I just think, like, this is a team that I think we're really going to have to watch out for, and I know I am certainly going to be putting a lot more respect on, I think, you know, in the near term, you know.
Yeah, my last comment, because we're not 100 Talk Pod, we are not the dads, and we're also not we're not David Shannock, but I do want to just give a shout out to the 100 Thieves bot lane. Ayla this past week massively stepped up.
Yeah, it's
probably the best he's looked since his days on, admittedly, when he was subbing in for Core JJ on Team Liquid. And then even FBI, like, FBI has always just been solid, man. There's nothing been like ever wrong with them. If you need just a carry, an 80 carry player who's just gonna pump some decent damage for you, like, he's there for you. He's got you covered. He's a great standard run-of-the-mill 80 carry that's not going to let you down. I thought FBI was really peaking this weekend. I thought he had some great moments that were like above what I normally picture him playing at. And so between Quid and the bot lane and then River's normal standard level of practice, this whole team is really, really coming together, which is crazy because all anyone ever wants to talk about on this team is Sniper, right? Because he's the personality. But no, I really think this whole team is coming together. And if it's one thing if, like, obviously this individual level play continues, but it's going to be a whole nother thing if this team can figure out its macro and their actual cohesive decision making.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be super exciting for sure. Okay, let's move towards FlyQuest now. I think it's a good time to do so. Excuse me. Sorry, I was just getting my notes together. So, taking on Cloud9 this week, and I think what was really interesting to me about this best of 3 was how each matchup wound up being so like stompy in all 3 games, where like everyone had an opportunity to pop off. It felt like at different moments. I want to ask you first, Curly, like what stood out to you here? I mean, we can get into the drafts in a minute, but like to me, one of the big things, and I do want to see if you agree, is like, were it not for like a couple just like really tough fights at certain times, I felt like this series could have gone like completely differently.
Yeah, I think especially like game 2, some fights just really ended up hurting us a lot more.
Yeah.
Because they either just were poorly executed or didn't need to be taken to begin with. I think game 3 is just something I wasn't satisfied with, period, in any aspect of the game. But overall, it like even game 1 took longer than I think it should have when I was watching it.
Yeah.
Because we had a very solid lead, but like delayed it because of like you said, some fighting was just a bad call.
Right.
So I think that's something we're gonna have to shore up for next weekend.
No, for sure. Knox, what were your big takeaways from the matchups?
I really want to emphasize that I think Cloud9 just really understood and did their homework, how FlyQuest plays.
Yeah.
Not to say that FlyQuest is one-dimensional, right? Because there was a couple different comps that FlyQuest put together that were meant to perform in different ways. But it really felt like outside of game 1, where I thought, hey, the draft was in FlyQuest's favor, and also in addition to that, FlyQuest really just understood, hey, here's how to pull our resources on the map into certain areas at the right time, just moments before Cloud9 can do it.
Yeah.
And that led to a lot of punishes, which, yes, it took a little bit longer than expected, but they ended up closing it out and taking game 1. Games 2 and 3, in game 3 especially, I thought the draft was very heavily in Cloud9's favor. I thought actually the game, like, I kind of want to go in on the game 3 draft if you don't mind.
No, let's do it. Please. Go ahead.
So
I'm getting the sense you didn't like it. So
no, so actually, it's not that I didn't like our draft. I think our draft is fine.
Yeah.
I was more impressed because Cloud9 read us like a damn book. Their draft is freaking brilliant into ours, in my opinion.
Okay.
And so, just for people to understand what our draft, what the draft was, FlyQuest was Urgot, Ivern, Victor, Ashe, Nautilus. You have the Ivern Ashe pair, which is great because you have this just obnoxious team fighting kite out. Like, it's very hard to get onto you. You have an Urgot for an extra little firepower, and then you have Victor, who has great little AP ability as well as zoning potential between the ult and the W. All this with like the pick potential of the Nautilus.
Okay.
All this, fantastic. Great standard comp, very much FlyQuest. That is FlyQuest brand.
Yeah.
The thing I loved about Cloud9's comp is, and their comp, just for a reminder, is Camille, Wukong, Talia, Ziggs, Bard. It's all disruptors. You have Talia and Ziggs for these massive areas of effect zoning abilities. You have Wukong that can like get in there, pop Cyclone, dash, knock people up, completely disrupt everyone and how they want to perform and where they want to position on the map. Camille, who Thanatos, to be fair, this has been kind of his weakness over the past, I guess, 8 months or so, ever since he came into the league last summer. Playing on a champion of Camille that requires a lot of communication and understanding of like, hey, this is where I need to be, this is where I need to collapse, this is where I need to flank. And so I was very nervous when I first saw it for Cloud9 because I was like, he's not typically been all that great at it. And this game, he did a fantastic job of finding multiple flanking positions that really put pressure onto Masu specifically. And then the Bard, obviously, which helps like disrupt things with the ult, making sure, hey, Victor's not able to put out damage constantly, and Ivern can't run away as quickly. Like, it zones people out all the time. Vulcan was doing a great job of roaming around and just being an absolute nuisance and being able to like go through walls and stuff with his E. It was just everything about this comp was meant to make FlyQuest team fighting impossible to perform, which is what the strength of this FlyQuest comp is. It was perfectly into Cloud9's hands, and I just respect where respect is given, like, or due. Like, Cloud9 drafted a perfect comp into what FlyQuest bread and butter was. And so, if anything, this is a call to Nuke Duck and Mithy, like, hey man, you gotta realize when teams are kind of drafting you into your hole, they gave you exactly everything you wanted. This was like Season 5 EDG versus SKT vibes where they let Faker's LeBlanc through.
Yeah.
Like, brilliant. Like, I just actually brilliant drafting from Cloud9. So I just props to Cloud9 on that. I hope this is a wake-up call to Nuke Duck and Mithy to, like, yeah, just because they let your bread and butter through, you cannot be letting them get this kind of draft against you, because counter matchups and counter drafts still matter, even if it's your bread and butter. So,
right.
Yeah, that's kind of my general thoughts in Game 3. Obviously, we can go into the minutia of, like, actually how things played out in the game, but just that draft was brilliant, in my opinion.
Curly, how about you? What were your thoughts on the drafts during the matchup?
I have one major issue, and I'm sure you know exactly what it is.
Not off the top of my head, but I'm excited to see what you have to say.
Stop giving Bwipo Urgot. Please.
I don't think
the fact that we got it's got a bad record. It's like,
okay, so it's a vibe thing. Okay.
Like, straight up, it's just like it's not good. We got a win against Shopify a week ago on it, I guess. And then we had the one at Worlds, but then the rest of last season and the way we seem to play the game when we give him Urgot is just, it's not it. It's not good. There's a lot of other champions. I mean, he has a whole flowchart of champions that he could have picked instead to do a much better job with his play style.
He does have the whole flowchart. You're not wrong about that.
He went beyond the flowchart, as some people in Discords were saying. But I don't like the Urgot there. And granted, let's see, what were the ban outs? Because maybe he didn't have much choice.
Galio,
we had
Rumble,
banned Gnar.
And Jace are all banned along with Gnar.
They had banned Mbessa. We had banned Gnar. We banned Renekton?
Yes.
Why did we ban Renekton? That's like... I don't know. I don't like you. Yeah, we got outdrafted there, but like, just don't whip out Urgot, please. There's a lot of other options that hadn't been taken away through either bans or Fearless.
Yeah.
I mean, shit. Had we even? Because it's just Fearless on your side, right? Or is it Fearless all the way around? Am I crazy? Am I delusional?
All the way around. If a champion is picked, you cannot pick.
Okay. Okay. Cool. That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Renekton would have been pretty solid there.
Yeah.
Actually, wait. Yeah, we should have picked Renekton because we've seen how like shieldy he is with inspired on Ivern, keeping him alive, the Dominus, the freaking Q just healing him up. Like, all right, yeah, we should have just picked Renekton. That was silly on us. That's my solution to this entire game.
Just pick Renekton.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there were obviously other things, because like Nox said, it was a very disruptive team. I don't think there's much we could have done there, aside from just maybe bully Loki or Sven a lot more early on, and that's the way we'd have peeled back from this. Yeah,
I think my big issues. I mean, I'll talk about like gameplay because I think those were that's where I saw a lot of the issues coming in. Were there were just like some bad fights chosen. Like I'm thinking specifically in Game 3 where things just kind of got broken open at different points that I didn't love, and I felt that there were a couple moments as well where it didn't seem, and this is specifically I'm talking about in like games 2 and 3, where I didn't feel like we were really acting cohesively. Like there wasn't like a cohesive game plan, and at some point one of you is gonna start talking, and I'll be able to like look up something specific here. But yeah, I think I need rounds 2 and 3. That's why I can't.
Well, I was gonna say I have a thought in mind, but it may be off top. Like it's on topic of game 2, but I don't want to interrupt your thought either.
No, I think like the big thing that I didn't love was I'll talk about the game 2 comp because I actually didn't like it. I didn't like the Galio, actually, really at all. And the Maokai just felt super useless in here. The other big thing about it was like that game 2 was how Loki got a triple kill like right from the get-go.
Yes.
And
yeah.
that was so killer.
It was game deciding, if I'm being honest.
And so it's like, again, just the fight selection, I think early on in game 2 was what was difficult for me to parse. I wasn't super happy with what I was seeing there. But what's your game 2 thought, Knox?
So my thing with game 2 was, and yes, the very early on triple kill to Loki was really, really bad.
Yeah.
It was really, really bad. However, if you watch the gold totals of each player, you'll actually notice that Quad ends up actually taking a gold lead over Loki probably about 3 to 4 minutes later, and he maintains that for pretty much the rest of the game. And the only exception throughout the whole rest of that game is Thanatos has a gold lead over Bwipo. The gold lead is actually in favor of every other member of FlyQuest, up until there is a specific fight that I'm going to reference here. But it is the fight where Inspired had just got picked. It was a good pick by Cloud9. And Cloud9 is pushing up on the mid turret, and it's 4 versus 5. And I don't know if Bwipo's just looking to try and surprise someone, but he's channeling his taunt. His taunt goes out, and he starts walking out towards tower, and Blabber immediately is like, we're going. Throws out his ult, snags him, and it's one of those things like you can buffer it, right, with the Galio E. And so,
right.
Okay, you can get hit, you throw back, and you still slingshot towards the tower, and he would have been fine. If you notice, though, and it took me multiple times to, like, watching it on replay. I rewound it 4 times. Bwipo eased into Cloud9.
Yeah.
He ints the entire fight. And that is, in my opinion, the moment where the game breaks open. Because before that, FlyQuest had actually been clawing it back little by little. They had the amazing dive topside where they had the 3-for-1. They were starting to push the bot side tower down. They were starting to claw the gold back. Like I said, every member outside of Bwipo had a gold lead over Cloud9's respective member. FlyQuest was coming back in that game, and it was actually getting very, very scary because you have a Smolder that was leveling up. The Kaisa was doing pretty well. But then Bwipo decided to E into the team, and I don't know why. And if I remember right, it was like another 3-for-0 from there, and it was just horrendous. And that in my opinion was what ended the game. Like that single moment to E into the Cloud9 team.
Yeah.
So I really don't have an issue too much with the comp that game. And while the level, not whatever it was, the early fight where the triple kill to Loki was really, really bad, I admit, because it put us behind. We were clawing it back, man. I really thought we had that game in the bag still. And that, for me, was the moment I was like, what the hell, man?
Yeah. Curly, how about you? Like, we've talked a little bit about game 2. I talked about comp. Knox talked about, Bwipo's play, and we both talked about the early Loki triple kill. I mean, for you, game 2, Thanatos' Rumble was a huge problem. Sven on the Jhin was a huge problem. Like, what for where'd things go wrong?
Well, so we were actually doing really, really well those first 6 minutes, and especially, like, Inspired was running the jungle. He was taking camps from Blabber, and, it was commented on by the casters that... because it was a 4-for-0. The triple kill went to Yone, and I forget who got the 4th kill, but it was a 4-for-0. that really kind of took that, and any momentum was gone. And so
Yeah.
I was like, oh shit. But then we did have like some moments where we were recovering. We had a really good push top lane where we had like gotten them to run all the way back to their second turret and like made some really good side lane pushes. So we were recovering. So like Nox said, it was really when that second major fight happened that we lost any chance. But the thing that was happening this whole time is Thanatos was just farming unanswered. He was getting gold, he was getting XP, he was being ignored, he was getting turrets, and then he showed up as a mid to late game Rumble who's not been checked by anyone, and laid down an ultimate, and laid down magic damage.
Yeah.
And you're like, what happened? Ignored the Rumble. So that was the one other glaring issue that set us back, no matter what else we tried to do. If we had punished them even once, like in the first 15 minutes, I think we have a bit more of a chance of coming back in that. But that was just the silent killer of Game 2 for FlyQuest.
Yeah, no, I think it was. Yeah, there was just a lot going on. I think in that game too. All right, let's move it forward to, we can look at the past all we want, but sometimes you also have to look at the future. And the future is Dignitas. Now,
That's a phrase.
the future is, well, it's probably not Dignitas, let's be honest. But I am loath to just write this off as a 2-0 after watching the match against Cloud9 this weekend. But I still feel confident about this. I still feel good. And when I say loath to write it off as a 2-0, I don't mean like, that I'm going to say a 2-1. I think I'll probably still wind up predicting a 2-0. But maybe like not without the hubris and arrogance that I might normally do when we go up against Dignitas. I think the question that I want to ask us, and I kind of previewed this in my little graphic on Twitter, is I just kind of want to diagnose what went wrong this past week and then give like what the prescription is. What's the doctors are in. What's the prescription for FlyQuest success this weekend? And Nox, I want to ask you first that question.
Prescription for FlyQuest success this weekend. I would say, I'm not necessarily. Well, Rigby's kind of a smart coach, so maybe keep draft in mind. But I would say the big thing is fight with Masu. A lot of the like the early game 2 fight where the triple kill went over to Loki, Masu was not there. A lot of the top lane fights that were starting, that Cloud9 ended up taking, it was because Masu was still arriving from mid lane and was not quite there to like be able to start it off with. I think a lot of the big issues that FlyQuest could have dealt with were due to the fact that Masu was elsewhere on the map and not able to join in immediately. And part of this stems from like Bwipo starting it a little bit early. Like he's very gung ho. Like he knows. Like obviously the comms are all there, right? Everyone's on the same page, and everyone's like go 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 go, right? But the problem is, I think Bwipo's usually just a half step to a step before everyone else, and Masu maybe sometimes, and I don't know if this is correct or not. It may be more correct for Bwipo to be ahead as he is, or maybe a little bit more correct to play it a little bit more slow. But the point is, like, I think those are the two opposites of the spectrum. Of Bwipo's a little bit ahead of everyone, and Masu's a little bit behind everyone. And I need the team to kind of squeeze it down towards the middle a little bit. I need Masu to respond a little bit quicker. I need Bwipo to maybe take it a step back a little bit. If those things happen, everyone's on the same page. You can see it in the gameplay, and you can see it in the map movements. It's just the actual like snap decision making and the timing of making those decisions that's just a little bit off. If that happens, it's an easy clean 2-0. I'm not worried. And even if they're off a little bit, I still think it's going to be a 2-0.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Curly, how about you? What's your diagnosis and what's the prescription?
The diagnosis is just a lack of focus and a tendency towards really choosing things that aren't quite best for us. So I'm court ordering some not therapy but counseling on focus on better just teamwork and overall. But then I'm also specifically prescribing UPIs for Whippo, that is ergot pick inhibitors, so that so that we cannot lock it in. Yeah, that's really kind of all it is I think we just need to be a bit smarter about how we draft to our strength. And of course, I'm not a pro. I'm sure maybe in the scrims that we haven't seen yet, that ergot actually does a lot. Or maybe there's a reason that Whippo has this like reason he keeps locking it in. And he's just waiting for that moment. So I'm just a dude sitting behind a mic over here. I can be wrong for anything.
Sure. We could all be.
But at the very least, one thing I know we're all not wrong about is kind of like what Nox said, is just get that coordination up and respect your opponents. I don't think Dignitas is going to be nearly the threat that C9 is. I want to take a side because I'm not actually upset about losing to C9, because I reflect on this team and like Sven and Vulcan are showing their veteranship. And Blabber is, always better in the first half of the season, or like he picks a half of the season that he's like really good for. So in the summer, I'm not going to be worried about them at all. But Blabber's chosen this split and maybe even spring to be good. So that's fine. And then Loki is actually showing up more. So they got a better roster than I initially had them up for. So losing to them is not something I'm disappointed in any way, shape, or form. And I'm actually excited that they were able to push us competitively. I just don't think it's going to be nearly the same issue next week.
No, I think that's a good take. I think my diagnosis was, or is, I guess, keep it simple. Try not to cook too much. And keep the plays simple as well. I think when we're in this early part of the season, when we're just trying to like get to Brazil and then, figure things out there, I think the prescription Dr. Sandy Toes would be giving here would be to focus on the little things and keep it simple. Pick better fights. Make your fight selection and your target selection a little bit more, just more like cohesive. Don't take fights just because you can. I think that was something that I picked out as like an issue that I didn't love seeing. Just better fight selection is going to be my prescription. And don't draft Galio top. How about that? That's also my.
I didn't mind the Galio. I didn't mind the Galio.
Not to gang up on you, Sandy, but I actually like the Galio.
I did not.
I also think the Galio was a really good call into Rumble, because of the inherent magic shield.
Yeah,
I just think
and 4 melees on Cloud 9.
Yeah. I just didn't. It's just not.
It was just unfortunate execution.
I would have rather. I think I might have rather Quad have taken the Galio and Whippo.
I can see that.
Whippo on something else. A little bit more like damage heavy. I mean, obviously the Cassante and Jace are out.
Whippo on Smolder.
Maybe that's the time to go for the Renekton. Is that moment. I think maybe I just didn't love Galio on the top lane. All right, let's take it ahead to week 3, and now we'll actually do the preview against Dignitas. Nox, I think you already kind of gave a bit of your take, so we'll do you second. Curly, how about you? Looking at first FlyQuest Dignitas and then also Team Liquid versus Shopify. Predictions, where do you think the chips are falling on these?
I think it's going to be a 2-0. I think I look at the rosters and I think it's just going to be kind of easier for us. Like Dignitas definitely had a better showing last week than first week, but I just think across the board there is like a literal skill gap. I'd say the one advantage they might have is obviously Surdy to me, because with he spent all last season training with Bwipo, so he probably, hopefully at this point, knows some weak points from Bwipo's gameplay that others might not, because they didn't get to work with him as closely. So you know, I think that's one place that they might be able to pull something out of. But overall, I'm just not terribly concerned about Dignitas here. Whereas Shopify Rebellion and Team Liquid, that one actually seems pretty spicy to me. Especially like we rolling it back to what Nox said. If Palafox is Palafaker and APA is slacking like he was, this can go very, very different. And then I don't know how Fudge did this weekend. But like, I low-key like when Fudge plays top, and I think he's actually a better top laner than people give him credit for. So as long as they have a showing like this week, that TLSR match might be pretty fun. It could be pretty good to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that I think it's going to be a couple 2-0s this weekend. TL and FlyQuest 2-0ing their respective opponents. I think both teams are going to bounce back pretty solidly and, you know, play it safe, stay smart, and not do anything too crazy, you know, and they're just trying to make it to Brazil ultimately. And in fact, I feel bad for the LTA South 1 and 2 seeds that are gonna have to play TL and FlyQuest right out. That is not something I would wish on those teams. That's a rough draw for them.
Which, fun fact, just as an aside, both of those teams already qualified, by the way.
They did, yes.
And it's not even 2 Brazilian teams. It is the 2 Latin American teams that qualified as 1 and 2 from CBLOL or from the LTAS. Which, wow. I love that personally. That is sick.
That's amazing.
Yeah, Leviathan and Isurus Estral. And Leviathan does have a couple Brazilian players on it.
There are some Brazilian players, yeah.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Just in time. But the cool thing is that the winner, Jose Diodo on Isurus Estral, that'll be very cool to see him back in the scene as well. I think it's going to be... I'm actually getting really excited for this tournament. I think it's going to be fun to see how things go here.
So I said this in the pre-show, but part of me would not mind losing the tiebreaker just so that way we can play Jose Diodo first round.
That'd be fun. That'd be fun.
I'm kind of okay with it, just a little.
It would be pretty good. It would be pretty good.
It would be fun.
I mean, hear me out. What if we just meet him in the finals?
Hey, maybe.
Well, I think problem is we can only meet him in the semifinals. If we dodge him here, we get him next round. I think.
No, because how it is, right?
Yeah,
it's
if
the top bracket
we
is
play him in the finals only.
Yeah, the top bracket is NA1, South America versus South America 4, South 2 versus North 3, and then it's the bottom bracket is like the flip, you know, South 1, NA4.
No, you're correct.
North 2, South 3. So there's a world where we get third. We stomp Lev. We stomp 100 Thieves. We await in the finals. Now, granted, that means they have to beat Team Liquid. That would be quite the stretch. But if they beat Team Liquid, they can beat Cloud9. If they beat Cloud9,
they could beat us.
We got a series on our hands.
I don't like how this is going. All right, let's move things along. Nox, we're going to ignore that disaster.
What do you mean disaster? It's the spiciest timeline.
It's the worst timeline. FlyQuest is the only team that's allowed to win in our timelines.
What? When did I imply we were going to lose? I just want us to be able to face Jose Diodo in the finals.
Right. Yeah, that's funny. Okay, Knox, how about you? What are your predictions for TL Shopify and FlyQuest Dig?
FlyQuest Dig 2-0. I'm again not concerned about it. I really do think the guys will clean it up and it will be fine. And like I said, I really like Dig may be better than DSG and Lion currently, but they're not an interesting team, and I don't really think they're all that good. And I would not be shocked that if the Lion and DSG continue their current trajectory of improvement, that they surpass Dignitas towards the end of like Split 2 or the beginning of Split 3. So, with that said, 2-0. Team Liquid versus Shopify. I'm actually going to say it's a 2-1 in favor of Team Liquid.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
I do think Shopify is going to come out to play. Part of this being, I am not really impressed with Umti. I said it earlier. I think he's kind of struggling right now. And I think Contracts is currently the best player on Shopify as it is right now. I really do think he's playing at a very high level. And I think between the fact that Palafox is showing glimpses of his 2023 self and the fact that APA is, I mean, he's still looking okay, but he's not looking all that impressive in my opinion. I think there's an absolute world where TL drops a game.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely could see that as well. I mean, 100 Thieves just beat them 2-1, so I really don't think it's out of their realm.
Should have been at 2-0, honestly, if Quid hadn't entered the last fight.
Yeah, no, I think they were looking strong all the way throughout. So, yeah, I'll be really interested to see how that series goes. That is all on Sunday, I believe.
All Sunday.
Yes.
There's no Saturday LTA.
Oh my
no
god.
Saturday LTA. They, it'll be during the Super Bowl, so be sure to.
Yeah. So when you're exhausted from the Super Bowl, make sure you tune in for the tiebreaker.
When you're
See what
at
happens.
your Super Bowl party, just lie to the host and say, "Oh, I want to put on the Puppy Bowl," and then you just flick it over to the LTA. And when they go, "What is this?" you just say, "Oh, my hand slipped. I don't know what it is." "Oh, I think I recognize this game. Have you guys ever heard of League of Legends?"
Let me show you.
Let me show you. Let me introduce you to some good stuff.
Yeah.
All right.
I will not be watching an ounce of League that day, unfortunately, because I'm also going to the Dallas Open, which is an ATP
nice.
tennis tournament. So I'm going to that, and then I'm immediately driving 30 minutes to my parents' house to go watch the Super Bowl. There's no League of Legends happening that day. I'm sorry.
I will also be missing that. That will be that night. That's Sunday night. I will work my last night shift ever.
On Super Bowl Sunday, are you serious?
On Super Bowl Sunday, yes. The timing was terrible. And
but at least you're free now, dude, and that's what counts.
I'm trying to max out my hours for that fatty paycheck.
I mean, hey, at least you're missing one of the least popular Super Bowls.
That is like,
remember.
if it was literally any other Super Bowl, I would have thought about taking it off. But this one's so bad, I'm just so uninterested.
Yeah,
so.
It's not bad to dodge this one.
No.
Okay, yeah.
This is one of those.
The only thing
you get into the lobby, and you see like your opponent just like they drafted Lux, Blitzcrank, Teemo, on the other side, and you're just like, oh. That's a fast dodge for me. Like this one, this is a justifiable dodge. I'm out of here. So that's my take on that one.
You cooked that so poorly, I hate it.
What, the draft?
Yeah, I don't like it. Oh.
Yeah, no, that's my least 3 favorite champions to see: Lux, Blitzcrank, and Teemo. Oh, terrible.
Valid.
All right. Well, we are going to close things out here. Another great episode of Flight Check in the books. Just want to thank you all for tuning in. FlyQuest plays Sunday night. Don't forget to get onto that. The other big thing is that we'll probably not be watching, but you can still follow us on Twitter. Isn't that great? And so convenient, too. You can follow us on Twitter for all of our instant reactions and thoughts. You can catch the show at Flight Check Crew, myself at SantosDB, Knox at Knoxwar with 2 R's, and Curly at Curly_QQ_. Make sure to hop into the Flight Check Discord as well. All kinds of esports discussion and otherwise taking place. And if you missed any part of the episode, the VOD will be up on YouTube tonight or tomorrow morning. If you're watching that and want to catch the show live, we broadcast the episode usually every Monday night, usually at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, right here at twitch.tv/FlightCheck. FlightCheckCrew. Knox, any final notes, shoutouts, or plugs before we wrap up?
Shout out to Kyler, who for the past 2 weeks or so has been pushing nonstop to get some scrims streamed from FlyQuest. And as of today, it has been announced that there are going to be live scrims streamed tomorrow at 1:45 p.m. Central Time, if I remember correctly. Maybe let me double check my timing on that. But
There's a tweet about it. There
is indeed scrims being streamed between FlyQuest and C9. So if you would like to go watch those scrims, it's there for you. Sorry, or 11:45. No, I was right. 1:45 p.m. Central Time, 2:45 Eastern, 11:45 a.m. Pacific. So go check that out. Props to FlyQuest for still streaming scrims even after taking the fat L to Cloud9 this past weekend. Hopefully we can pick up some things, learn some things. I'm still of the opinion that this whole helping elevate the region as a whole by streaming scrims thing is kind of but in terms of entertainment, I think it's actually a fantastic thing to do. So good luck, guys. I'm actually excited to watch it on my second monitor.
Good luck. Curly, how about you? Shoutouts, notes, and plugs.
I'm going to do a shout out to Legends Arceus, Pokemon game. I haven't touched it in a couple of years, and I took today off and I just played it so I can actually, beat the post game. And I was casually reminded that it might actually just be one of the best Pokemon games of all time, because of its very unique concept and play style. It's very relaxing to just play. So play Legends Arceus if you haven't in a while. It's a good time. And then also shout out to anyone. Yeah, and then also shout out to anyone who came into my stream last Wednesday. I'm trying to get back on that grind at least a couple times a month. Doing some solo queue and might do some other things here or there. So hopefully you should see me this Wednesday as well.
Nice. As for me, my shout out this week, dang, I don't really have a good one. I think I'm going to shout out, and I always struggle to, come up with one, even though I give time to both these guys. And then I sit there and I'm like, I don't know. What's my shout out? You know what? It's February, which means that spring training for Major League Baseball is officially this month. Pitchers and catchers begin reporting in a week and a half. The long winter is almost over. Spring is finally around the corner. The sun set today at 5:32, which is very exciting. So spring is almost here, folks. Just hold on a little bit longer. Ignore Punxsutawney Phil, because the last 10 to 15 predictions that Punxsutawney Phil has done, he's only gotten 3 correct. So that groundhog is a scam, an absolute con hog. So don't listen to the groundhog. Spring is right around the corner, and we'll all be so much happier for it. But we'll be back next week talking about FlyQuest and hopefully who they're playing once they reach Brazil. So we'll be back for that, and for now we'll just say stay safe out there and bite your teeth. Don't forget to hit the head on the nail, and we'll see you all very, very soon. Adios, everybody.
Have a good one, guys.
Peace, y'all.
Let's escape the gray and let the colors rain. Turn the shit we do and our words into pure reality. 'Cause you and me are meant to be what they don't see. Never feeling wrong 'cause we don't belong. And getting high in love, we're invincible. Trust in me, we're invincible. Don't you see?